Blessings, good evening. I have a few questions have come in, so have a look at them. Ajahn, my question is about the feeling tones of pleasant, unpleasant and neutral. With the body sensations I sometimes experience during sitting practice, I often want to respond. Examples are getting an itch under my nose, wanting to be scratched, or a muscle tightness in my thigh and I want to shift my position. I typically do respond by scratching or shifting my position. What I put effort into not doing is bringing up a story or a judgment about them. When I scratch and begin to say, I am scratching again, I have been somewhat successful in not thinking that. When I shift positions, I'm also somewhat successful in not thinking about shifting in the past or how often I do it. My question is that I am not at a place where I can ignore the physical adjustment. I do scratch and I do shift. Is there a method or an approach I can add to my practice to reduce and eventually eliminate this physical response to a physical discomfort? Is there a tool to refocus my attention, as returning to the breath alone does not end the itch or the muscle pain? Thank you for your kindness. Well, itching and muscle pain and shifting and whatever is all very normal for, I think, everyone. Part of this is just being a human with a human body. Human bodies do not stay pristine. They're sensitive things, so sensitive to the temperature, the air. They're constantly aging. We get illness and allergies and bites and insects and nerves and things are constantly chopping and changing around and different conditions coming up. So it's quite normal, especially as you sit longer, get some muscle pain and different kinds of discomfort, and itch, very normal. So I always encourage, first of all, is just to be patient with it all. Because it's so normal, it will definitely happen and something you'll encounter often. But I started meditation dealing with itches and the desire to scratch. I could only sit for 3 or 4 minutes and then I'd have to get up because of pain in my legs. But even in those 3 or 4 minutes, itching would come up, and that was a problem. I just noticed how, first of all, you've got to tell yourself what to do. So with an itch, it's such a small thing, you can kind of risk telling yourself, don't move, don't go for the itch, don't scratch. Just be tolerant of it and be patient with it and try your best to ignore it. That was my way of practicing. I try to ignore it and return to the breath as much as possible. Because we all know the more you scratch and the more you move, the worse things tend to be. Of course, if you decide not to move, not to respond to the itch with any movement, that often brings up more of a desire to scratch than ever before. You tell yourself don't do something, then that's all you can think about it for a while. But what I found was if you keep not scratching, not moving, not doing anything, eventually it does fade. Your interest changes, you lose interest or the desire to scratch or move fades. That's what I found. So I'd always suggest just, number one, reminding yourself to be patient with pain, with itch, with all these sensations. Be patient. And that's something you have to remind yourself, don't you? You have to tell yourself. Ideally, yes, you go to your meditation object, the breath, for example, and just stay with the breath until the itch or the pain just doesn't bother you. You don't pay much attention to it, you don't give importance to it. That might be the ideal, the aim. But if you can't do that, because the itch is becoming so annoying, you just really can't go to the breath, or the pain is so impinging on you that you can't ignore it, then usually we recommend we'll make the itch or the pain the actual focus of your investigation. You move away from your meditation object, such as the breath. Place your attention on the very thing that's annoying you or making you want to move or stop meditating. You make that the center of your attention. So you put your mind there. Ask some questions. What is this? Where is it? How bad is it? Who owns this? Does it belong to me? Is it permanent? Is it always there? Is it coming and going? Is it sometimes more, sometimes less? Very simple questioning and looking and observing what that sensation is, where it is, makes it into an object of mind rather than just something you react to. So even just questioning and investigating can reduce the sense of self and ownership of whatever the experience is. At least you can do that for a while. Occasionally that may be enough in itself, and the whole thing just fizzles out and you can return to the breath because of the power of your own wisdom and investigation. Even if it doesn't just fizzle out, and gradually you just can't investigate it anymore, the pain is too intense, the itch is too annoying, at least you've established what is what. You become mindful of the problem, and if you're about to move, to scratch or to get up or change posture, you know why, and you know you made an effort to be mindful, to be patient with it, to be mindful, to investigate it. You've done all that. And then mindfully you might move. So mindfully you can scratch with awareness. I know why I'm scratching. There's an itch, and you scratch and see if that works. Or you have to move a bit, change your legs, change your posture because of pain. So you change your posture, but you know why. You know why you've done it, and you were patient up to the point where you moved. And then you see whether you can continue with your meditation. Maybe just make a small movement, small adjustment would be ideal, the best. But if you really can't meditate anymore, you have to get up and move, so be it. But you've done it mindfully and you know why. So you still learn something from that situation. It's not like a defeat or a failure, it's just an acceptance. There's a strong feeling here that's really impinging on me, affecting me. But I know why I'm moving, I know what's going on. You're not just reacting, you're not just doing it in a kind of habitual way. You're mindfully changing posture, and you know why. And of course, we can walk meditation sometimes. That's a good practice for when you have pain, that you can't sit anymore. Well, practice walking meditation for a while, and then maybe later you can sit. The aim of our meditation is always to bring up or maintain the mindfulness, the awareness, ideally of our primary object, but sometimes you have to accept, you have to change that object to perhaps some investigation, so you're now mindful of the new object, the itch, the feeling, the sensation, the pain, and developing some insight into impermanence, not self perhaps. But the aim is to maintain awareness, cultivate clear comprehension, insight as much as possible, even if you have to move. It's not that moving means you give up your meditation completely or you quit being mindful. It just means you're accepting there's a limitation with your body and your mindfulness is not strong enough to just stay with the breath, keeping the breath in mind. You're accepting that, but it doesn't mean to say you give up altogether. It just now you move posture and you may move object, but you can continue. So there we can also learn how to be adaptable in our meditation and just see what works and see what you can do to continue your meditation. So if you can't sit, then you could walk. Or you can just move a bit and then carry on. Sometimes you go to investigate the sensation, the itch, the pain, and then you go back to the breath. So you didn't actually move or scratch or do anything. You simply turned your attention from one thing to another and then back to the original object that you were with. So there's a number of things you can experiment with here. The idea is to make everything part of the practice. Try to, like you say, not to make a big story, a big drama out of an itch or a pain. You just take it in your stride, as it were, and just deal with it as you can, the best you can, without creating extra suffering and worry and annoyance with yourself and all that. There's no point. So you see what you can do. And what I found, and many people find, is that if you practice this regularly and you get the right attitude, you put some effort into your mindfulness practice, itches and painful feelings often subside and bother you less and less over time. You may still have pain coming up from time to time in your practice, but your attitude changes towards it and you know how to deal with it, how to treat it as just another object of awareness, a feeling. We call this knowing the feeling in the feeling, knowing the body in the body, knowing the feeling in the feeling, meaning not making anything out of it, not creating suffering, a story, not reacting with craving to it, aversion, usually it would be aversion, wouldn't it? Aversion to a certain feeling or sensation. Not doing that, but more just witnessing it, observing it. Most people find as they practice more and more, they can do that better. They're more patient, more aware. Their wisdom and insight is clearer, so things improve over time. And in the end, maybe itches just don't bother you at all. They may come up, but they just don't bother you. Even pain, to a certain level, maybe it no longer bothers you. It may be there in the background of your awareness, but your mind isn't making anything out of it. Yeah. So keep practicing, and you learn all the time. Dear Ajahn, thank you for sharing the Dhamma. While watching the mind during my work day, what do I do to root out defilement? For example, I often feel and then see ill will arise. I have been stopping and reminding myself that all things are impermanent and imperfect and impersonal, that all beings want to be happy, and that we are all destined to die. If that doesn't help resolve the ill will, I remind myself that this is an unwholesome state of mind. So if I die right now while having it, I cannot go to a good destination. But ill will still comes up, though less so than a few years ago. What did Ajahn Chah mean when he said to root out the defilements? How do we do that? Is that only possible when in samadhi? Thank you very much. Well, if you're getting less ill will than a few years ago, it sounds like you're doing something right. You're on the right track. And probably number one thing to do is just keep practicing, keep putting effort into your practice, keep cultivating strength of mindfulness by practicing meditation, sitting, walking meditation, particularly using an object, such as the breath, which is very calming, and you can turn to that, and that will help you to calm and relax maybe, or one of the other meditation objects. Generally speaking, this will all help you to deal with the ill will. And you'll notice, the Buddha said, ill will arises as a result of giving unwise attention to something. Basically, you're paying attention to what you don't like. And you don't really know what you're doing, or you're not fully aware of what you're doing. It can be very unconscious or very quick or very kind of with half awareness. So if it's a person, you're paying unwise attention to what they just said or some behavior of theirs, which is stimulating, first of all, some unpleasant reaction in you, a feeling of tension. Then you get the negative thoughts, the disapproval, the criticism, the unhappiness expressed in thoughts as well, trains of thought. Sometimes you get images as well. But it's giving unwise attention to something which triggers the ill will. So as you practice mindfulness, maybe you can start picking up on that, getting to know yourself better and getting to know your habits and how you see that person and think of all the things you don't like about them. You hear that person's words, you don't agree, so the aversion comes. You're in a situation and you only think about what you don't like about that situation. As you become more mindful and maybe catch these triggers and see this process by which ill will is arising, well, then you have the opportunity to maybe train yourself and develop some new habits. It takes time and effort, of course, but if you know you always think about what's wrong with a place or a person or a situation, maybe you have to counter that. Bring up the reflection, what's good about this? Is there something good in this person, this place, this thing that triggers aversion? Is there something I can focus on, turn my mind to, or be mindful of that's not going to trigger aversion? At the very same moment as you see them, you think of the good thing. Or you think of something that brings you a good feeling or makes you feel kindness, compassion, or at least more peaceful, rather than focusing on what you don't like. So that takes both wise reflection and then some effort and some practice. And often you have to think things through ahead, like if you've seen a problem, I'm always getting angry in that place or in that situation or with that person. When you're away from it all and you've got time, think it through. If you really want to train your mind and develop a freedom from anger, you've got to think it through, plan, have a strategy, have a plan, what am I going to do next time? So you can even imagine, when I meet them, I think like this, I do like this happens, that happens, I'm angry. You're just thinking it through, and then you're saying, well, is there a different way I can treat this situation, or a different way to relate to that person, or what should I do that's better in that situation? So first of all, you just maybe plan it and think it through, and then you try and apply what you've learned from your own reflection in practice. And there'll be different solutions, aren't there? Sometimes you just move away, sometimes you divert your attention, like, say you see somebody and you're so angry with them and you just see them already, anger is coming up. So maybe you know that's going to happen, so you look at something that doesn't make you angry, something else, turn your mind away. You have to plan it and try and work out how to improve things. And there's so many ways you can do this. I'm only giving you very simple examples. But the basic thing is you're giving unwise attention to something that stirs anger. So you have to pull your mind back from that habit and develop a new, better habit with mindfulness, with understanding, with insight. There's also the preventative practices like developing, cultivating the object of metta, goodwill, kindness and compassion. Every day I would recommend as a meditation. Morning or evening or even the middle of the day, whenever, sitting down and cultivating goodwill. Before you're even angry, you're already doing this. Making it strong, making it familiar as a feeling, as a train of thought, as an intention, so that if you are in a situation where anger has been triggered, and it's often very quick, I know, so it sort of suddenly it comes up, but then you can maybe return to the goodwill quite quickly. And if you meet someone we call a meditation master, someone who's mastered their mind, that's why we call them a master. They've learned to do this, so it's a very beautiful thing to see. They're in a situation, quite often it'll be with a person, or maybe when they're injured or ill. And most normal people in that situation would go straight to some kind of expression of anger or ill will. Say like someone's being very rude or aggressive, and you might expect them to be angry, react with anger. But instead of reacting with anger, they react with calm, equanimity, or even some form of kindness or compassion at the very moment when normally anger might be triggered. That's someone who's mastered their mind, and they're not just doing it casually, they're doing it because that's how they've trained themselves. And we can do that. I mean, the Buddha did it, the Arahants have done it, not just Arahants, but people who have practiced, trained in the Buddhist path, right view, right effort, right intention, right mindfulness, all these qualities, having been trained and developed them, then they can use them in those sort of situations and pull their mind away from anger towards something better. And you're happier for it, less suffering, so why not? There's many reasons why we do this, but it's also a matter of practicing it, getting used to it. If you really, rather than sticking with the object of your aversion, the unwise attention, I really hate this, I really don't like them, you go to, I don't want to be angry and suffer with anger anymore. If you get that understanding, then your mind will want to pull away from its old habit of always going to anger. You just don't want to go there. You don't want to create that kind of suffering anymore. So you get some strength and encouragement and enthusiasm to go to a better object of mind in that situation. Maybe just telling yourself, no, I don't want to get angry. I'm not going to get angry. It may arise, and then you quickly put it out like a fire. It starts, but then you quash it straight away. So in the end, it's sort of practice, isn't it? You have to do it. But you can also do the preventative practices of cultivating metta in daily life as a meditation, as a way of life, helping others, cultivating metta for other beings, other people, animals around you on a regular basis, because that will also diminish the likelihood of anger arising. It will help. And you ask Ajahn Chah, what did he mean by rooting out anger or ill will? Well, this is what you're doing. You're changing your habits of mind, your karma. So even when something that formerly would trigger anger comes up, you have enough mindfulness, patience, insight, not to react in that way, but now to react with, we would say, with Dhamma. So maybe the Dhamma of patience when someone's being rude or aggressive, say, or the Dhamma of metta when there's, you want to have ill will, but you bring up the metta, or compassion for yourself, compassion for someone else, to the point where just anger is just not being nourished or fed anymore, so it starts to wither like a plant that doesn't get water and fertilizer. It starts to wither away and die. Anger starts to die, so it just doesn't return. In certain situations, maybe you've already achieved this, because it happens little by little over the time of our practice, and you may not have completely abandoned anger yet, but there may be certain things that used to get you angry that no longer do, and it sounds like you've already experienced that. You know, there's something, when it clicks, maybe you can even smile at yourself on how you used to get angry with this person or this situation, but now you don't, and you just smile. It's like, I used to get angry there, now I don't, and your mind is in a better state. We say you've got merit, your mind is wholesome, meritorious, and they say someone with merit gets angry with difficulty, because their mind is naturally with merit, with better thinking, better ways of thinking, better intention, more wholesome, more positive ways of thinking. So a lot of that is just, what do you call it, recycling, redirecting your mind to the point where the anger is no longer being stimulated. The triggers and the conditions for anger to arise are faded. You know, the internal conditions are faded. Externally, maybe you still meet all kinds of situations which could prompt anger, but you no longer take them up because you know it's suffering. You just know that. You know, we can practice things and develop an understanding to the point where you know without having to think much about something. Like fire. You know fire hurts. If you put your finger in it, you don't doubt it, you don't have to discuss it. Should I put my finger in the fire or not? No. You just know it, don't you? You don't need to think a lot about it. Anger is like that. No, don't want to go there. Don't want anger in my mind. It's suffering. Let it go. There's many different factors will help you to do that. You know, wisdom, obviously, mindfulness, obviously, patience, the cultivation of metta, goodwill and compassion, sila, you know, restraining your anger to the point where a lot of intentions die away, that you no longer have the intention to kill the mosquito, you abandon it to the point where it just doesn't arise. So you use the whole of the path to gradually change your conditioning, your mental conditioning, so you're uprooting defilement. You keep going. I mean, you know, you won't completely abandon anger until you're an anagami. That's quite an advanced state of practice. So you just keep going, and you can see this is the way to do it. Well, if I keep going, keep practicing, eventually the anger's just not going to come up anymore. It may still be coming up, but you know how to practice with it and what to do. That's your aim. You might say, as Ajahn Chah used to say, if you've established right view, mental defilements are still being stimulated. Greed, anger, delusion, selfishness, jealousy, whatever. It's coming up. But you're treating it correctly once you've got right view. So you don't hold on to it and indulge it. You don't feed it. You let it go. You don't want, I mean, we say, do you only uproot defilements in samadhi? Well, maybe the very last moment of a defilement, whenever that may be, who would know, but whenever it comes, well, probably there's samadhi, wisdom, sila, samadhi, panya are all working together at that very moment, the final moment when somebody abandons anger. But you know, there's levels of samadhi, aren't there? So there's some samadhi where you can still contemplate, we call upajara samadhi. Some samadhi is one-pointedness to the point where you're no longer thinking, so you can't contemplate. Samadhi will still be a powerful factor in helping you to abandon anger, but it's not the only factor. You also need panya, wisdom. Samadhi purifies the mind, strengthens your mindfulness, gives you a great radiance of mind, a refreshing state of mind with powerful mindfulness. We call this, samadhi is called the holiday of the mind, because you get a good rest from all the hindrances and the normal suffering, mental suffering of the mind. But it hasn't, the practitioner who's attained samadhi but not developed panya, insight, still needs to practice in contemplation, don't they? Developing insight into the three characteristics. Samadhi alone is not enough. It's the support, it's the foundation, but then you have to practice developing insight. So it's possible to develop samadhi, come out of your samadhi and get angry if you haven't developed the insight. And this is a very common thing, stories and anecdotes from the time of Ajahn Chah, like the one monk who was living in a cave, very serene and developed very strong samadhi. He was very reclusive, living simply, and outwardly seemed to be very enlightened, wise, peaceful monk. And coming down from his cave to rejoin the Sangha at Ajahn Chah's monastery, bringing with him his great samadhi and his aura of being very enlightened and very restrained and mindful, and it was all good. And then arriving at Wat Nompapong, where there's some very well-trained, well-developed enlightened monks, but also 16-year-old novices and new monks, and some monks who are very talkative and some monks very reclusive, and some were old and some were sick, and there's all kinds of visitors, and there's nuns as well, and there's this happening, and there's a work project, and there's that, and there's this, and there's chanting, and there's this and that. And then the monk was getting very confused because he couldn't maintain his deep state of samadhi anymore, because it was dependent on living in a cave. So when he's back to the busy monastery with many people, he couldn't maintain it, so he got very upset. So Ajahn Chah pointed out, your samadhi is based on one set of conditions. As soon as those conditions change, where's your samadhi gone? It's a very fragile kind of samadhi. It's not to say it's all wrong or bad, it's just not yet combined with wisdom. If you have wisdom, insight, when you come out of your samadhi or out of your cave, you can reflect and see anger arising and see it as impermanent, not self, let it go. That's the purpose of samadhi, is to provide a foundation for developing insight. But if you don't train in insight, you're just clinging to your samadhi alone, then it's a very fragile kind of peace that could easily crumble under certain situations. And people find this all the time. They've got their nice state of samadhi in their nice quiet place, but then they can't maintain it in different situations. So panya, wisdom, has a big role in helping to maintain mindfulness and then erode away the defilements in all these different situations, not just when you're in the cave, but when you're in other places as well. So, samadhi alone is not enough. We need wisdom. When we dedicate merit to other people, do we gain merit ourselves? Yes. You make merit by dedicating merit. You even make merit when you see someone else dedicating merit and you give your anumodana to them. You appreciate, oh, they're making merit. Good on you. That's more merit. Once you get into it, it's like, oh, there's merit to be had everywhere. Good fun. The more merit, the better. And of course, the important thing is you don't lose any merit by making merit or dedicating merit to a then departed loved one. And some people are worried about that. Oh, if I share all my merit, I'll have nothing left for myself. It doesn't work like that. You just share. You make merit. Ideally, they know that you're making merit for them. They rejoice in it. It makes them happier. Maybe that improves their chances of a better rebirth. if it can be done, good. You don't know necessarily, so come back to your own merit making and rejoice in that, and you hope, you wish that others can rejoice as well. So you won't run out of merit. In that way, I guess you say it's better than money, isn't it? You share your money around, in the end there's nothing left unless you go and earn some more. You share merit and you make more merit and double your money, double your merit. It's got to be better than money. Can we make merit in secret? Yes, of course, you can make merit in any place, on your own, with other people, in different situations, yes. Nobody knows about the merit you make, yes, quite possible. Maybe your character is more like a Pacceka Buddha, you're kind of private, reclusive, just carry on doing your practice and you're doing a lot of meritorious things and nobody really knows about it. Especially the more into it you get, the more you understand what is merit, how to develop meritorious actions, speech and thought, and use your mind to develop merit. The more you understand that, then you don't necessarily need to be with other people to make merit. It will be part of who you are and you'll just do it naturally. So you could be on your own somewhere and you just have a thought, wishing somebody somewhere else to be well, happy, free from illness, or in another, they've died and you wish them to attain a good rebirth. You can be totally alone and do that. Or you can do some kind act, what we call sticking gold leaf on the back of the Buddha. No, you don't tell anyone, no one else knows. If you're in a monastery, there's endless opportunities for that. You clean something that no one else cleaned, that's just been sitting there dirty or untidy for a while. You clean it up. You don't tell anyone, nobody knows, but you know. And that's merit, isn't it? Or you meditate on your own somewhere and you bring your mind to calm, let go of the hindrances, maybe develop some insight. That's merit. You have to remember, we make merit in many different ways. It's not just dana, giving, because often we think of that as merit. But it can be dana, it can be sila, keeping precepts. So if you're being bothered by a fly or a mosquito, but you decide, I'm not going to kill it because I keep the precept, it's annoying, but I won't kill it. I'll do my best to shoo it away or endure it. That's merit, and no one else might know that you're doing that. Or bhavana, you do some bhavana, whether you're with other people or on your own, that's merit, and it's the greatest merit, bhavana, because you're really changing your mind in a positive way. Developing mindfulness from when you had no mindfulness is very meritorious. Developing insight where there was no insight is meritorious. It's the highest merit is to free your mind from the mental defilements. So you need to cultivate bhavana to do that. So dana, sila, bhavana are all parts of making merit. Teaching the Dhamma, listening to the Dhamma is merit. Making your views in line with Dhamma, straightening them out from previously held wrong views, wrong beliefs, superstitions, crazy thoughts and beliefs that we've previously had. Straightening your mind out is great merit. A lot of this is done in private, in your own mind, and maybe other people are not fully aware of what you're up to. The people who tend to know what you're up to are other people who have merit and practice. They'll tend to notice, or they say the devas notice someone who's making merit. There's a lot of stories I know of monks who are well practiced in the forest on their own, and a deva comes forward to give their anumodana, appears, a vision, an image of a deva, saluting the monk, saying, oh, please carry on practicing for nibbana. It happens. Or not just a single practitioner in the forest on their own. Sometimes in a monastery like this, people are meditating, like on the all-night sit, chanting, meditating, And sometimes people see or hear devas coming to give their anumodana to the merit that is being made. Many different situations. So sometimes in secret, sometimes with others. For somebody whose mind is with merit, thinking in meritorious ways, it really doesn't matter anymore whether they're on their own or with others. It's going to be developing all the time, isn't it? Following on from that, it says, what is the highest merit? The highest merit is freeing your mind from the mental defilements, greed, anger and delusion. So cultivating insight into the Four Noble Truths, cultivating the Noble Eightfold Path for the abandoning of defilement and the causes of suffering would be the greatest merit. So that's all of it. Sila, Samadhi, Panya, it's all of it together results in freeing the mind from defilement, from wrong view, from attachment, from suffering. So that's got to be the greatest merit. So the Buddha would say things like, being born, living one day with insight into impermanence, anicca, the characteristic of impermanence, is better than living 100 years without. Because one day with clear insight into the impermanent nature of our five khandhas, the body, the mind, the world, will bring you much closer to Nibbana than living with 100 years but without insight. So I'd say those kind of things to give you a real flavour or understanding of what the most meritorious things are and how powerful they are, how important they are. So it is important to do your meditation, calm your mind, develop some samadhi and develop insight into impermanence. This will bring you to let go of defilements. That's the highest merit. Change your mind for the better. Doesn't mean to say it's not worth doing other forms of merit making, so giving dana, helping people, practicing compassion, generosity, keeping precepts, listening to Dhamma. All of this is good as well, and this may also contribute to the practice of your meditation. It will help. But just in the hierarchy of merit, the highest merit is obviously the insight that removes defilements from your mind. Seeing the three characteristics, impermanence, suffering, not self, in phenomena, in your body, in the feelings, in the thoughts and the mental states. This is the highest merit. When you have anger and mistrust between one or more partners in a relationship, how can the Dhamma help repair this? Well, probably number one Dhamma that would be useful is patience. Because if you've already reached a point of mistrust and anger, it's going to take some time and effort to get anywhere back towards a trusting, peaceful relationship. So patience, consciously being patient with the situation, with the other person. So if both people are doing that, there's a chance, isn't there? Being patient. Well, it's not only the only quality, we have to get back to the point where we have trust and respect for the other person. Whether we can achieve that depends on each partner being willing to commit to that relationship and trying to rebuild it. Sometimes if one of them or both are not willing to do that, then maybe it is beyond repair sometimes. But if both are interested and want to repair the relationship, well, that's what you need, don't you? You need to be able to cultivate an atmosphere of mutual respect and trust. So in Buddhism, often that's built by committing to the 5 precepts. You're committing to the quality of, kindness, not killing, not being aggressive, respect to property, not stealing, not damaging someone else's property, trusting relationships, not cheating on your partner, honesty with your speech, and then kind, useful speech, not abusive speech, and then sobriety, not taking drink and drugs. So just keeping the 5 precepts, maybe both people committing to that for a period of time would definitely help, if they can. It depends on who you are, what the situation is. You see, sort of alcohol tends to damage relationships and make everything worse. Lying destroys trust. When we're angry with each other, we damage each other's property. Unfortunately, we use words as weapons. We physically harm each other or each other's property. We know all the downsides, so then committing to not doing any of that behavior is going to develop trust. But you have to really try, you have to work with yourself. So each person has to see the value of improving themselves in that situation. When you're angry with someone else, you tend to just be looking out at them and forgetting yourself. So we have to change that around and say, well, I'm going to develop myself, train myself in the 5 precepts, practice patience, work at my side of it, and if you work at your side of it, then there's a chance these 2 people can maybe rebuild some trust. So build it around the 5 precepts, patience, goodwill, see how far you can go. Are sati and sanya the same thing? Well, obviously not exactly the same thing, otherwise they would have the same name. But they're certainly like relatives, friends, they're similar. Sanya is usually translated as perception, as one of the 5 khandhas. But sometimes it's translated as memory, or memory and perception. So perception is like how you remember things. The signs, the labels, the bits that you remember that give you some kind of something to latch onto. So you've seen something before and you remember it. You've seen a tree before and someone said, that's a tree. So, tree. And you know the shapes and the colours and there's a familiarity, so you know that's a tree, that image. That's perception. But perception obviously can be very detailed and can have add-ons. So it could be a nice tree or an ugly tree, big tree, small tree. You may know the name of the tree, the name in your language, the Latin name, the this name, the that name. Perception builds and multiplies and proliferates. But it's the way to identify and remember things. But we also remember things wrongly. So you may see a tree and actually it's a lamppost. Oh, there's a beautiful lamppost. Oh, it's a tree, is it? Okay. We can get things wrong. We forget. We remember wrongly. So it's not that we're all have photographic memories, is it? So perception, memory is very subject to change. It's anicca. It's a conditioned thing. Sati is a particular quality, and here we probably would say Sama Sati. So Sati is part of the Noble Eightfold Path for the ending of suffering. Sama Sati is going to be backed with some wisdom, samaditi, right view, right understanding. So with some wisdom, Sama Sati can be used almost like a tool. It's a quality of mind, a tool for training the mind. And one of the characteristics of sati, or mindfulness, is not forgetting, or keeping something in mind, not forgetting something. So there you can see there's a very close relationship to perception. And you can use different perceptions to train sati. So we say anapanasati, you keep the perception of the breath in mind, or anicca sanya, you can be mindful of the perception of impermanence, say, meaning you keep it in mind, you keep returning to it, you don't let your mind stray from that perception. So you can use perception with sati to train the mind, and that can be a very useful thing. And sati, when practiced frequently, becomes stronger and becomes samadhi. Samadhi is really the continuous presence of sati, mindfulness. So they're not exactly the same thing, but they're very similar. But as I said, sati here is particularly samma sati, back with the wisdom and the other factors of the path working together. So perception, you might say, is a very neutral thing. You don't have to be Buddhist to have perception. It's just a function of the human mind, wherever you are, whoever you are. If the 5 khandhas, those 5 khandhas, you're born in the world with these 5 khandhas: body, feeling, perception, thought formations, sense consciousness. Anyone has them. Samma sati is really a part of the Buddhist path, so it's a particular thing that you train in, a quality of mind you develop, and you can use the other parts of the 5 khandhas, and you can be mindful of them. You can be mindful of the body, mindful of feelings, mindful of perception. So it's not neutral in the sense it's part of the path. Whereas the 5 khandhas are kind of neutral, they're just there, they're just those things that we work with, the raw material, the raw data. Where is avijja in the 5 khandhas? Avijja means ignorance or not knowing, unawareness. So that's the whole point. We don't know where it is, we don't see it, we miss it. So if you can really answer this question, then you're probably very close to enlightenment already. Because if you knew where your avijja was, you wouldn't be under the influence of avijja. You wouldn't be ignorant. You would know. So it's a kind of funny question. I guess you're trying to say, which khandha is it? In a way, it's all of them, because the mind that is conditioned by ignorance, not knowing, takes all the 5 khandhas as self. There, we call them the upadana khandhas. We attach to them or cling to them as me, mine, myself. That's ignorance. That's ignorance functioning there, because we believe, from what we've heard from the Buddha, that they're not self. This is what the Buddha revealed through his own insight and then started to teach, the 5 khandhas. When we cling to them, we suffer. When we no longer cling to them, we no longer have the view that they're self, they belong to me, I am them, we don't suffer. So ignorance, in a sense, is with all the 5 khandhas. It's particularly the opposite of avijja is the opposite of vicca. Vicca means knowledge. Knowledge, or which might be in Buddhism, say the true knowledge, or the meaningful, useful knowledge in the world, is the knowledge of the Four Noble Truths. So avijja, lack of knowledge, or wrong knowledge, or no awareness, is no awareness or no knowledge of the Four Noble Truths. So that's another way of looking at it. So you could say it's a kind of sankhara as well. We say avijja paccaya sankhara in the teaching on dependent origination. So sankharas, meaning mental formations, or karma formations, intentions, where do they come from? They come from ignorance. The arahant still has 5 khandhas, but they no longer make karma, because they're no longer attaching to the khandhas as self. So the practice of the Noble Eightfold Path, the practice that we're doing, at some point brings ignorance to an end. Then the khandhas are just khandhas. They're no longer a basis for clinging, they're no longer a basis for self. and ignorance has gone. Until that point, we have this ignorance in the mind coming up all the time. So the way ignorance expresses itself, avijja expresses itself, is through clinging, mental proliferation based on craving, clinging, becoming, birth. So I guess you could say it's a sankhara khandha, but it's really all of the khandhas, isn't it? You're attaching to them all. So that's the end of the questions for tonight.